Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the IIMS, I welcome all of you once again to this iconic building. I mean, a memory to be cherished, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure everyone is going to cherish this memory. Kirk had been doing a beautiful job yesterday of ensuring that we get our memories back into our mails once the photos are processed, and Mike is taking over today. Well, speaking of photographs, it's not only during such occasions that we take photographs. I mean, I'm sure none of us goes out on a survey without a camera in his pocket. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Why do we do that? Basically, to collect an evidence, of what we have seen on the boat or the ship. Here is one thing that I would want all of you to imagine. Just imagine for a couple of seconds that you have gone to a survey, done a survey perfectly on the dot as it is supposed to be. You have left no stones unturned. You have collected all the evidence that you require to present as it should be in the report to your client. Unfortunately, the case goes into litigation or arbitration, whatever it is. You have a very strong case. The counsels representing your principals have argued the case perfectly well in the court of law. The opponent's counsel comes up with one point where now you start thinking that the scales are going to tip. And then you remember, just wait, I've got a picture back in my file which can prove my point, and I can get the case back to where it was. You present this photograph through the counsel in the court of law. Perfect. The opponent counsel has a look at your picture, asks for an original file of the digital image. After some scrutiny by the image forensic department, the piece of evidence is thrown out of the court just for one small slip up which someone in your office did after you clicked those pictures. What would happen? What was this all about? It was all about the evidentiary value of that image which you presented into the court of law. How do you preserve the evidentiary value? I mean, several factors to it. There are several things that go behind an image which will preserve its evidentiary value. And one important thing about that is integrity of the digital image. We got to prove that the digital images that we have presented are absolutely integral. In the old times, that was the equivalent of a negative that you have, or you had rather. These days, there are no negatives. But yet, you can prove that the integrity of your images and the evidentiary value of the images is not ruined in any which ways. Well, photography deals exquisitely with appearances, but nothing is what it appears to be. Well, we all know this, but with the use of editing softwares, this is what happens. And it's true. We will see how it happens. Sometimes it happens knowingly. Someone does it on purpose. Sometimes it happens unknowingly. And that unknowing aspects are what we are going to discuss. Again, speaking of integrity, what is integrity? I mean, it's the same as the definition of integrity in our normal life. Moral principles, ethical practices, sound moral character, honesty, state of being whole, state of being sound, undiminished, unimpaired, perfect. That's how the digital images that we present should be. Absolutely true. As far as a digital image is concerned, there are three factors which will affect the integrity of an image, what I personally choose to call it as an integrity triangle. One is the metadata. The other is the changes that we do in the images. We will see what changes those are and what is permissible, what is not permissible. And the most important aspect is the workflow. If we don't have a workflow, things are going to be problematic. I mean, Zarir, with your permission, I borrowed Zarir's words yesterday, what he said that you should have a business plan. Excellent. We should have a business plan to start a business with. But we need to have a plan to run the business once you have started it. It is this workflow, the digital imaging workflow, which is going to help you ensure that your images never ever get thrown out for lack of evidentiary value. We'll see how all of these are interrelated. I mean, fairly simple things. Many of us know this. It's only sort of a revision that we are going to do and see what we should and what we shouldn't. Let us talk about metadata. What is metadata? Quite a lot of senior members here who will agree with me that the first thing that we were taught after coming back from a survey and after the film was processed was make notings of the pictures that you have taken. Which picture was taken where, for what was it that you were trying to show? Am I right? We did that. The moment the negatives came back from the processor, we scribbled onto that. We took these pictures of so-and-so vessel on so-and-so date. Picture frame number so-and-so was for the engine room to show the damage onto the boiler, whatever it would be. We did that. We did that onto our negatives. We did that on the slides. Today, it is done by cameras and PCs whenever you take an image. Things are simplified. Technology is helping you. You don't have to do this. Part of it is already being taken care by the cameras and the PCs, but there is some part which you need to do. Let's see what it is. You know, talking about metadata, many people say metadata is data about data. That reminds me of another small incident. There was this lady who was a hot air balloonist and who was trying to land a hot air balloon into thick fog, poor visibility. She was quite low to the ground but couldn't see anything down below. But she could hear some faint human voices. So she asked from a balloon, "Can someone help me tell where I am?" And there is someone from the ground who says, "Lady, you are about 65 feet above the ground, 300 meters above mean sea level." The lady gets back to him and says, "Thank you, Mr. Counsel." This man down below was astonished. How come? He asked back, how do you know that I'm a lawyer? Well, she said, your answer was 100% correct, but totally useless. Sorry, I mean, if there are any lawyers here. But that's how describing metadata as data about data is. It's totally useless. What does it mean, data about data? Well, we will stick to only digital images and image files. And metadata, when we discuss about image files, is nothing like a Japanese bento box, lunch box. We've all seen this? Yeah? I mean, various portions with various things, dishes served into it. Your picture image or your digital file, after you take it out from your camera, looks something similar to this. The top section there is the digital image, the actual pixels of the image. That's the actual picture that you see, which is captured by the camera, right? The next file that is associated with it, or the next data that is associated with, is the Exif Data, that is the exchangeable image format. I mean, some of us use Windows, some of us, we use PCs, we use Mac, we use Android, whatever it is, but we see the same picture in any of the device that we use. How does it happen? It happens because of the Exif Data. The pixels are converted by the Exif Data and you see certain details. Yeah, it's more to do with the technical data about the image that you have captured. We must remember, whatever you see in yellow on this slide is something which we must pay attention to, and this is one of it. The other data is the ITPC core and extension legacy data. ITPC stands for International Technology Partners Conference. This is basically nothing but a descriptive data about the image. This is some data which you and me can add to the image if we want. This was something like writing and scribbling onto the negatives, as I said. You can write descriptions of what this image was, why this was taken, what it is relevant to. That is what it is, and this is user-defined data. The next is the Plus or the Dublin core. Plus stands for Picture Licensing Universal System. Any of us right-clicked onto a Google image, a picture, and seen permitted for use for Creative Commons? Try doing that. Right-click onto any Google image and see. There are certain usage rights for pictures. Some pictures are copyrighted. You can't use them. Some pictures are copyrighted for anything but editorial use. That means you can only use them for non-commercial editorial purposes. Some pictures are for any commercial use. As surveyors, we don't have to bother about that because we don't sell our pictures, right? But that's what it is. But it is associated with every digital image that you take. So it's worthwhile knowing. And the next is the GPS data. Many cameras these days come with a GPS receiver, and you actually geotag your pictures to where you have taken. Makes life very simple. You take a picture in the Lloyd's building, you have that data that this is taken at lat long so-and-so, 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 period. No one can ever argue with you that you didn't take this picture at the Lloyd's building. The data, the metadata at the back of the picture is proving it. But this is available only in those models of cameras which have a GPS sensor. Well, that's how the structure of the metadata is. Now, we are aware that we take JPEG images, we take TIFF images, or we take GIF images, different formats of images. All these, the TIFF, GIF, and JPEG, they all have metadata attached within the file. So it's a part of the digital image file. But when you take a raw image, some of you, I mean, Mike will know what I'm talking about when I'm saying a raw image, as the name says, it's raw. It's just the image pixels. All this other data goes as a sidecar. You had those two-wheelers in the olden days with a sidecar. All these files go as a sidecar along with it. So there are different ways that metadata is attached to an image file. We'll see each one of them, how to see metadata. Well, this is a typical image handling software called Adobe Bridge. Now, for example, we just saw that image on top. Can you all read? Okay, I'll enlarge it for you. Now, what do you see in a typical Exif data? You see this camera data, Exif, and the ITPC core here. Now, this Exif data is what is recorded by your camera and the computers when you download or change any picture. What you see is basically exposure mode, exposure program, ISO speed ratings, focal length. It's basically nothing but the camera technical details as that were set on the camera when the image was captured. Not much that you can do anything here. But what you got to pay attention here is the date created, date file created, and date modified. This is something where someone can go wrong and have his digital images proved as non-integral if you don't take care. Always remember that the date file created and date modified, as far as this is concerned, is when the image was taken. Now that image which you saw of the slides and the negatives is not yet downloaded. It is yet in the card. So what you see here is 22nd April 2014, 10/23/28 was the file created. Date modified is also same, proving that the file has not been modified. The picture has not been changed in any which ways. Same, the date file created is 23/29. That's the time that it has been actually processed within the camera. There is a little processing time as well. So always, whatever metadata you see, always pay attention to these three fields in the subsequent slides that I'm trying to show you. This is what you and me normally will see as metadata when you right-click on the picture and say properties. In properties, if you go to the details tab, you're going to see all these data here. I'm trying to show you different kinds of data, but if you scroll down, you'll see the similar data as I showed you, exposure programs, etc., down below that. So it's just simple, right-click the picture, properties. If we are shooting in RAW is a proprietary file format for different cameras. Nikon has its own RAW format. Olympus has got its own RAW format. Nikon has got its own RAW format. So you will need a good proprietary software to see the metadata of a RAW file. Now, if you see the RAW file metadata here, it appears onto the right side of your screen. I'll enlarge it. Some different kind of data here. You see the white balance, the noise reduction, active delighting. These are all the settings that your camera has set whilst taking that picture. Now, you may have control over the settings, you may not have control over the settings, but what settings were used are all there. And should you change an image for any reason, these would change, and these we'll see how they are discovered. Here, if you see down below, here there is location info. Now, this location info is that GPS tagging which I just mentioned. Yeah? These tags is basically the ITPC tags, description, contact is the ITPC data. The content categories is again ITPC. Again, contact could again come into the plus and Dublin core where you can put your copyright there, that this is copyright to Mike Schwartz, so no one uses it. But this is how it is. Let's not worry about raw data because that's not what we are going to do in our day-to-day lives. Now, this is one actual screenshot of a file under the name Aegean Rose, which we did in Paris. Now just have a look at this image. The number of the image is P7220367. What is the metadata for this? If I'll enlarge it again. Yeah, date created 29 July at 9:32. Date modified 22nd July 3:31. Clicks a bell. Something has changed. Yeah. The picture was actually taken on 22nd July, but downloaded onto my PC on 29 July at 9:32 after I came back. Now you have not changed the image. You have just copied it. What has happened? The metadata has changed. Now if someone comes up and says, Milind, you have actually modified the image. How do I prove that I have not modified the image and just copied it? Date taken, again it shows same year and year, but this has changed. Just make a note of that. Look at the size, 293 MB. Now if I have to transfer 10 such images of a pre-purchase survey over the email to Uday, it's not possible. I need to compress that, right? Let's compress this image. Let's see what happens. I have compressed this image, 7220367 large. Now this is the first place where we are likely to make a mistake. Let's remember that. We need to compress images, no doubt about that. But whenever we compress images, ensure that the original is intact. Always compress the image and save it with a different name so that the original, which now is your negative, is not changed. Should you need to prove this with this, it's possible. Look at what has happened to the metadata there. See, the date modified has changed. Date taken is 22nd July. Date modified 21st April. Date created 21st April. That's when I actually compressed it. Now if I don't have a record of this, it can be challenged, because the person looking at this picture will not know why this metadata has changed. Yeah, we are coming slowly to the point of workflow. If you want to compare it with the earlier image, look at these two fields, how they have changed. Yeah, the date taken yet remains the same. The date created, date modified have changed. You have not changed it. The PC has changed it without your knowledge. Till the time you don't know how it changes, it's very difficult for you to ensure that you don't do any mistakes. There I have resized it. It's just gone to 279 KB. So far, everything fine, perfect. Now comes the ITPC data. When in our normal PCs, if you right click onto the picture, go to the properties tab, details, and you just punch in anything into this field called tags. You can actually save the details about your picture, why you took it, where you took it, what does the picture say about. I mean, this will be helpful when you are writing your reports. Right or wrong? I mean, it certainly is going to make sense that you look at the report even in your absence, someone else looking at the pictures is able to know what this picture is all about and save it. But the moment you hit the save button, this again is going to change the moment you save the data. This is adding of the ITPC data, which I said is user control. You can do it, you should do it, but only remember what happens when you do it, right? That was just for your viewing details. Now for some reason, I decided that the blue sky, as you see in the original, is not good, and I changed it to a shade of pink. I do not know why I did it, but I thought I should do it, I did it. If we see the properties tab of this particular original file, the program here would be Olympus Digital Camera, because that's the program used to make the picture. But the moment I made any change to the pixels, you remember that right-hand top, image pixels? Now by changing the color of the sky from blue to pink, I mean, we are not going to do that, I'm just showing this as an illustration, but changing it from blue to pink has actually changed those pixels there in the top right-hand corner. See what happens to the program name. This is the first evidence to say that yes, you have tweaked your photograph. The takeaway so far, basically 3 categories of metadata: Exif, ITPC, and plus and Dublin Co. Exif is one of the most important data to establish the integrity of the image. We know that now. Now we will see during the latter part of the presentation as to how to preserve that integrity. 5 minutes? Perfect. Any change to the image or its properties is discoverable through metadata. So don't be under the impression that you do something and it would not be seen. Changes. This is very important. Manipulation versus enhancement. What is manipulation? Basically just trying to change the material fact of the picture, period. Things that were not in the picture are being inserted in the picture, or things that are there in the picture and you do not want to show the client, you're removing it from the picture. Not done. Simple, not done. We can't accept manipulations, no manipulations. What is enhancement? Well, enhancement is just an improvement of the original image for various purposes. I mean, we all print pictures into our reports, right? Sometimes because of lack of contrast, they don't print well. You can enhance your picture to print well, but not the original. Remember, not the original, always a copy. We will see how this is. I'll show you some live examples quickly. This was a hull to deck joint which was damaged. Good picture. You can see all the layers of the laminate there. You can see the core. You can see the inner lining there. Well, everything. But if I print this image onto my bond paper, which I use for my normal reports, this is not going to print because it lacks sufficient contrast. What do? I enhance the contrast. This image is going to print very well into the report. Excellent. Can make out each and every layer of the fiberglass there, laminate. Perfect. But someone back in my office again, who is a little bit too clever than me, decides that this rope which is hanging there is not good. Milind didn't do a good job. We should have removed that rope. Yes, I should have removed that rope. But then someone back at my office tries to remove that rope and does this. A pixel to pixel cloning of the rope. If you look carefully, you can still see the part of the rope here. But still, a good morphing. If this goes in the court of law, not accept. This is manipulation. Because the pixels that you see here are not the pixels that they were in the original image. 3 pictures side by side. Original, enhanced, manipulated. The last one, not acceptable. Another case. This was a fire investigation that we were doing. Well, this is exactly how we saw the fire-affected containers in the port. Again, as I said, this picture is not going to print well onto a report. So what we do is we simply give an overall enhancement to the whole image for the contrast. Perfectly fine. This is just enhancement. But if I do something like this, which is very subtle, you will not notice. I'm just trying to play it back and forth. It's very subtle. What I have done is I have only enhanced the contrast of this face of the container and this face of the container to show the contrast between white and red and between black and red. What I'm doing is I'm altering a partial part of the image and leaving the left unchanged. If I enhance the contrast of the entire image, it's acceptable because you're not changing any material facts. In trying to do this, I'm being selective as to where my principal looks at first rather than looking at the whole image in one go. This, again, is not acceptable. I'm sure we don't do this, but we do not know. Sometimes back at the office, if someone does it by mistake, it can be problematic. So you should know this. Again, let's see all the 3 images side by side. Another aspect which many people argue upon is image cropping. Some people say a cropped image is not good. Some say it's okay so far as you say it is cropped. I fall in the latter part. Now let's take this particular picture. It shows a crack onto this tooth face. Perfectly fine. But you can't see that crack in greater detail here in this picture. So what I do is I just crop this part of the photo and put it here so that you can see the crack clearly. Perfectly fine if you do it this way, where you show the original image and crop and enlarge a section of the image and say this is the enlarged section of this part of the image. Perfectly fine. But if there was something at the back which I was trying to conceal, just not acceptable, because then I'm trying to hide the material fact. So let's understand these few things. There's nothing right or wrong about cropping images. If you're cropping images, upfront and say that yes, I have cropped it and this is what it is to show a detail of this. So this is about it. Simple things, not big rocket science, but it matters to know. We have often seen such kind of overlaying of data, right? Whoever did the survey did a fantastic survey of making all these damages known. There is a crack here, there is an indentation, there is a bend here. But then he any which ways has measured this. Why didn't he write this 183 centimeters in front of the bend? Why did he have to overlay the image with these pixels? If it is just limited to this, is fine. But someone overlays the pixels to this extent, it is not acceptable because you are trying to conceal something that is behind there. You may not be actually concealing, but the In the court of law, someone who is trying to argue and prove you wrong may say you're trying to hide something here. And now again, if you don't have the original with you to show that I have hidden nothing, you're losing your case. So overlaying data, as far as possible, do not do it. Avoid overlaying data onto your images. The best is to write it down whenever you are taking the measurements. Period. Simple. Image manipulation is difficult to detect, but it is not impossible. When we were using analog photography, it was very, very easy. We did manipulations even then. We did enhancements even then, but those were easy to detect because you could actually see a line out there. In digital images, it's not possible to do it. I mean, rather, it's difficult to do it. It's not impossible to do it. Image forensics has gone a long way. Hashing, error level analysis, your bit by bit tagging, in-camera authentication of digital image. There are several things which can go to prove the integrity of your images. So just pay attention to them. Before you make any change to your image, always ask one question to yourself. Will this change or alter material facts of the image? If the answer is yes, do not do that change. If the answer is no, fine. It's perfectly fine. No issues. This brings to a very important aspect of workflow. Again, I say what Zari said. We have planned our business. Now we got to run it properly to see that we don't get into a pitfall anywhere. And this is going to help you prevent that. As I'm talking about imaging workflow only where it comes to handling digital image. You should always have these 4 things specified into your policies as to how would the images be transferred. Would you be using a proprietary software to transfer the images, or is it just copy-paste? Just copy-paste is better. Addition of ITPC data to the images. Who is authorized to add this ITPC data? In my personal opinion, it's the surveyor who has done the job is the best person to add an ITPC data because he has seen the site there, right? Who else better than him can describe that photograph? So it's but that should be specified as to who is authorized to add the ITPC data. Second is image compression. How do you compress images? At what stage you compress images? That should be specified. How do you archive your images? Again, that goes to show the chain of custody of those images. These two are a bit interlinked there. We'll see some quick pointers there. These are 3 basic rules which you should always remember whenever you're formulating your policies. They'll help you. I mean, whether it's policies or otherwise, even if photography is your hobby, these 3 rules are equally important. First is the rule of 1. You should have at least one set of untouched, unedited originals equivalent to old-time negatives. Simple, right? We'll see how to transcribe that into the workflow. The rule of 2, at any given point of time, ensure you have at least 2 separate sets of photographs. Fairly simple. Rule of 3, at some point of time, you must have a 3rd set of photographs stored away from the 2 separate sets which you made earlier. If you follow these 3 rules, your workflow procedure is never going to be flawed. Let's see how. Now, this is a typical imaging workflow which I use. I don't say it's right or wrong. It's for individual to decide and formulate your own things. But we'll see how those 3 rules have applied here. What I do once I'm back, this applies more when you're doing a multi-day survey. If it's just a one-day survey, this is going to be fairly simple. But just imagine of a case, a salvage case which you're doing over a period of 3 years, like what Nick showed us yesterday. I mean, coming back every day with a set of photographs, trying to archive them. This is applicable there. Once you come back from field, I normally copy the card from my PC into a subfolder titled Original Photographs under the File folder. I have copied it. I have not cut pasted it. So now my rule of 1. My originals are always there on my card. The copy is on my PC. So I have one set of original. Also my rule of 2. There are 2 sets of pictures at any given time. What I then do is I copy my folder from my PC onto the server. Rule of 3. Card, my PC, server. Once I have copied it to the server, I then either delete the card or archive it. This depends. It's always good to archive your card if you know this case is going to land up in the court of law arbitrations. It's always better. If not, you can now delete. Again, your rule of 2 is applicable because you have got now the one that is in your PC or in the server as the original and the other copy as the second copy. Now, obviously, I need to compress. So what I do is I make a copy of my original photographs into another folder called working folder. So now within my PC, I have 2 sets of pictures, one as the original, one as the working folder. It is this working folder that I would compress and rename and use it for my reports and transmission. So I again have two originals now, one on my PC, one on the server, and this is a working file. Again, the rule of 3 is also applicable here. Again, we have seen this, and then once the survey assignment is concluded, I archive the whole file into a separate location and keep it separate. But one thing, if you notice, everywhere that is common is record date and time, record date and time, record date and time, record date and time. Why? Because when you have this record along with your file, every time that the console sees that the metadata is changed, you can say, hold on, what is the date? 21st April 2014, what did I do on 21st? Okay, yeah, I compressed these photographs. That's the reason why the metadata is changed. Now you can prove why your metadata has changed. Your integrity, evidentiary value, is being preserved by this record that you're trying to keep. A little additional work, but yes, it helps, especially for those of us who frequently do matters that go into the court of law. This certainly is going to help. Respect your efforts, respect yourself. I mean, this is all about self-discipline. Without self-discipline, it is very difficult to follow this. I'm sure if Mike is doing serious photography as his hobby, I mean, he would be doing this. Tell me if I'm wrong. Well, we saw this integrity triangle, we summarize. We saw the metadata, what metadata is, not data about data, but we know that it is Exif, ITPC plus and Dublin. How intentional and unintentional changing of metadata can affect. Intentional changing is when you are changing the ITPC details. Unintentional is when you are simply copying your files. It's being changed. But then if you know when it is being changed and you're recording when it is changed, helps. We saw what changes are acceptable and what are not acceptable. And we saw the 3 golden rules of workflow, and we saw how the workflow was. So if we, in short, if we do this, it's not a big deal to prove that your photographs are unedited. That's it. Thank you.